Ever think about how one decision can change the course of history?
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
I've been reading about Fort Donelson, and it's just mind-blowing.
Oh, the Civil War battle? I've heard bits and pieces, but what's so significant about it?
Well, it's like the tipping point in the Western theater of the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
February 1862, the Union was pressing hard, and along comes Ulysses S. Grant making waves at Fort Donelson.
Grant before he was president, right? So what went down there?
So, after a swift victory at Fort Henry, Grant turns his attention to Fort Donelson, which was this formidable Confederate stronghold on the Cumberland River.
Right.
The fort was crucial because it protected Nashville and controlled access to the river, a vital route for the South.
So losing it would be a big deal for the Confederacy?
Huge deal. They had about 16,000 men there, under Generals Floyd, Pillow, and Buckner. They heavily fortified the place with earthworks, artillery, the works. They knew how important it was.
And Grant just decided to take it on? Bold move.
Exactly. On February 11th, Grant's 25,000 men started surrounding the fort. Over the next couple of days, they tightened the noose, engaging in skirmishes. Then, on February 13th, Grant ordered a full-scale assault.
And did it work?
Not quite. The Union troops surged forward, but were met with, withering Confederate fire. The attacks failed, and casualties mounted.
So the Confederates held their ground?
For the moment, yeah. Meanwhile, Union naval forces under Flag Officer Andrew Foote tried to bombard the fort from the river on February 14th, but it didn't go as planned.
Why not?
Well, Fort Donelson was elevated, so Confederate gunners could pour deadly fire down onto the Union gunboats.
I see.
After a brutal exchange, the gunboats had to retreat, damaged and ineffective.
So things weren't looking great for Grant and his forces?
Exactly. It seemed the Confederates had the advantage. Sensing this, the Confederate generals planned a bold breakout. At dawn on February 15th, they launched a ferocious counterattack against Grant's right flank.
Catching the Union off guard?
Totally off guard. Union forces fell back in disarray. Victory seemed within reach for the Confederates. But then Grant showed up.
And turned things around?
Yep. He quickly assessed the situation and issued that legendary order: no terms except unconditional and immediate surrender can be accepted.
Powerful.
He then ordered a counterattack along the entire line.
Talk about leadership under pressure.
Exactly. The Confederate breakthrough collapsed. Their forces, now trapped within the fort, had lost their last chance to escape. Panic set in among the Confederate leaders.
So what did they do?
Well, in a rather, surprising move, Generals Floyd and Pillow fled the fort, leaving General Buckner to handle the surrender.
Seriously?
Can you imagine being left holding the bag like that?
That's rough. So Buckner had to surrender?
Yeah, on the morning of February 16th, knowing further resistance was futile, Buckner formally surrendered Fort Donelson and its 13,000 troops.
Wow.
It was the largest Confederate surrender up to that point.
That's a huge victory for the Union.
Huge. The North was ecstatic. Newspapers hailed Grant's leadership, dubbing him Unconditional Surrender Grant. It really boosted morale.
And what were the consequences of this victory?
Well, it opened the way for the Union to capture Nashville, making it the first Confederate capital to fall.
That's
It
significant.
also cemented Grant's reputation as one of the North's most effective generals.
So this battle was a turning point in the Civil War?
In the Western theater, absolutely. It showed that the Union had the strength and leadership to push deep into Confederate territory.
Yeah.
It was a game changer.
You know, it's interesting how one battle can have such far-reaching effects.
It's fascinating. And thinking about it, if the Confederates had managed to break through and escape, who knows how things might have turned out.
Exactly.
History could have been very different.
Speaking of which, I've heard some people argue that Grant was too harsh with his demand for unconditional surrender. What do you think?
Well, I mean, in war, sometimes you have to be firm, but perhaps a negotiated surrender might have saved lives. Exactly. His decisiveness might have prevented further bloodshed in the long run. It's a complex issue.
It's always interesting to debate these historical decisions.
Definitely. And today, the Fort Donelson battlefield stands as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice from both sides. It's a place where you can really feel the weight of history.
I'd love to visit someday.
Me too. It's important to remember these events and reflect on how they shaped our world. It gives us perspective.
So in the end, Fort Donelson wasn't just a battle. It was a pivotal moment that reshaped the Civil War.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect. The victory there set off a chain of events that had huge implications, and it propelled Grant towards greater command and eventually the presidency.
It's amazing how history unfolds.
It really is. So next time someone mentions the Civil War, remember how critical Fort Donelson was?
Definitely.
It's a story worth telling.